When it comes to like food as medicine, it's something that's kind of always been woven into the philosophy of the work that we do and how we go about looking at Indigenous food from this culinary perspective, because we need to eat healthier to live healthier. Obviously, everybody understands that concept, but it's not always so easy when you live in a place where it's hard to get any kind of healthy, nutritious food. And a lot of people develop very bad habits around food at a very young age. So a lot of people are used to grabbing a lot of their dietary needs out of a gas station, for example. And it's just not a healthy diet. And like myself, growing up with the commodity food program, which again just has so much unhealthy food base there with, when I was growing up, it was just a lot of vegetables packed in sodium and a lot of fruits packed in syrups and bad sugars, and, just going through a lot of things like government powdered milk and government cheese that's, not even really a cheese product, and all of these things that just add to the health crisis that we have all over the place, and all these foodborne illnesses that are really high on tribal communities, because some of these tribal communities we've seen can have upwards to 60% type 2 diabetes sometimes, and a lot of obesity, a lot of heart disease, and all these other things that come from just poor nutrition access. So we're trying to understand, how do we tackle food access? How do we get people to think about eating healthy? And the restaurant upstairs at Owanmi, we don't have to call it a health food restaurant, but it happens to be probably one of the healthier restaurants in the nation, because we have a lot more plant diversity, we have a lot more protein diversity on the menu, and again, we're gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, soy-free, pork-free, beef-free, chicken-free, all these things, and there's all these diets that are mimicking these kinds of diet styles to get to where they need to be. But if we just ate more indigenously, especially in indigenous communities, we would see a lot of impact right through there. But again, we need to have access to those foods, which is a big part of what we're trying to attempt to address and hopefully have some big impacts on in the future. It's good timing because there's a lot of effort into just understanding the importance of farm to table, for example, which has been a big movement for a while. But also a lot of time farm to table left out a lot of voices in a lot of communities, and it became a very privileged situation where you're utilizing very privileged farming situations, people who have a lot of wealth, a lot of land, and a lot of money. And it's not like that for a lot of indigenous communities to have access to those particular situations, and the costs of those foods rise up quickly because they are specialty, and it becomes unattainable to be able to purchase foods like that all the time. So it's rethinking things, because indigenous values really already incorporate all of that stuff of just utilizing land space, understanding just how we look at the world around us, and creating a relationship with the plants around us especially, and just knowing what can we harvest throughout the year that could help supplement a lot of our dietary needs. And we're seeing a lot more support for Native American agriculture out there across the US, and we're seeing a lot more awareness of how permaculture could be a really community changing situation by just curating land spaces to grow a lot of foods that are indigenous to those particular regions, and especially that carry a lot of cultural value and cultural relevance in relationship to the tribes there they might be. I always say in my talks that lawns are stupid and we should just be putting food all over the place, everywhere we absolutely can. But it's also important that we have commercial kitchens and trained people to be able to know how to harvest and process and preserve a lot of these foods to create the pantry items that are needed, because even with just a few acres we could tend a huge area with a lot of diversity in plants and create a lot of food product that could be processed, preserved, and turned into a lot of pantry items that could really be utilized for a lot of food relief efforts out there. And on top of that, you can utilize a lot of indigenous medicine wisdom too, and turn a lot of these plants into medicinals, into other health and natural beauty situations too, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for indigenous peoples. There's an immense amount of opportunity for indigenous food production. And again, we want to play a support role for the work that we do by helping to create systems, create entities that can be real-time support systems for training, for development, for curation, and just for maintenance. We just hired my friend Linda Black-Elk on for a lot of our education side of things, and she's an amazing ethnobotanist, and she runs with a lot of amazing people who are very smart out there. And for me, it's just been a lot of networking. It's really just been meeting people like yourself, where you're in your region, and really knowing your space so well, but other people around the nation in all these different regions, whether it's Southern California, deep into different parts of Mexico, or way up in Alaska, or the East Coast, or the West Coast, or wherever it might be. There's all this amazing diversity out there of food systems and just food regions in general, but also just a lot of diversity in culture. And a lot of the work that we're doing is trying to showcase how amazing and how much diversity we have across North America. And if we did this through food, especially through places where people could literally come and eat, like this restaurant upstairs, people could really experience all of this diversity in culture and language and food and flavor.
Corn and the marinated beans going to 8. Another marinated beans going to 10.
8 and 10.
That's right.
And we can share it. We can work with other groups and, showcase, like, here's what food of Alaska tastes like. Here's what food of Arizona tastes like. Here's what food of Oaxaca tastes like, and be able to showcase North America through this indigenous perspective, and really do our best to create situations that move a lot of food product, especially from indigenous food producers. And then at the same time, we could do a lot of like pantry boxes and get that out to families in need, and do a lot of education on what to do with some of these pieces, because some people might not know what to do with dried corn or some of these specialty beans or things that are out there that are not typical of things that you find in the grocery stores today. So that's why education is such a huge and important part of all this too, because it's just creating an education system that could just be accessible to anybody to utilize for all sorts of topics, whether it's food, culinary, seed saving, farming techniques, soil management, star knowledge, language, medicines, crafting, oral histories, anything. Like, we just want to create a space that preserves that for future generations and sets that up so we can preserve the diversity of this knowledge that's out there, and starting just with North America. And eventually we can cross all these colonial borders, because of course we could be in Canada, of course we can be down in Mexico, but we could also be in South America or Africa or India or Southeast Asia or Australia or New Zealand. And there's just so much work to do out there to help to steward indigenous communities and cultures on a global scale, instead of allowing them to be further whitewashed and just assimilated and into just what's been going on for centuries now, with so much racism, so much loss of land access, so much just destruction of culture in general. So it's really up to us. Like, we can't wait for other generations to do it. We just have to start systems to do it now, today.